that this is about PhD applications. And in this presentation, we will begin by introduction to panelists, and then we will discuss what PhD is all about, what are the key considerations, what does it involve, then the difference between a doctorate and other degrees, and then different types of PhD programs. We will discuss the specifics of a PhD application and discuss the funding opportunities and career pathways as well. This is, as I told you, a project EduAccess initiative. And basically, the vision is that it provides professional opportunities to marginalized communities, which it believes that are systematically denied through cost, information, and dispositional barriers. So it is an attempt to include all those marginalized communities to the opportunities of education that are available abroad. And this is done through four key interventions. First is that we provide mentoring, counseling, and role modeling, and then information, advice, and guidance. We build capacity and leadership skills, and then through evidence-based advocacy, we progress further. The Oxford Pakistan program is a unique initiative. It's a scholarship program for Pakistani students, and it is based in Oxford. So everyone who is applying in Oxford University, they can benefit from this program. And it's a very significant initiative because this is first of its kind program and specifically focused on Pakistani students. So, and especially the Oxford Pakistan program community, all the student body that are associated with this program, they are a source of great help for prospective students. And as I told you that this will be a series of workshops. Today we are with the PhD, we are discussing PhD applications, and these workshops will be available online once it's done. The recordings will be available. You can access it afterwards. Let me introduce you the panelists. So we have Bilal Mustafa, who is postgraduate student in biology at University of Oxford. Then Iffat Parvez doing a postgraduate diploma in organizational leadership at the University of Oxford. And then Moosa Waraich, also from University of Oxford, doing a DPhil in history. And then we have Dr. Beenish Iqbal, who is a PhD in respiratory medicine and is from King's College London. So I'll ask the panelists to kindly start the presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ajmal, for the overview and introduction. I'm now going to talk you through the understanding of about PhD, what it is about, what are the components, and over the next few slides, and then we will try to talk about particular types of PhDs in different fields and some brief information about all of them to just kind of encompass as many of your aspirations as possible. So if I just summarize what a PhD is, it's basically just generating new knowledge and new information. And of course, when you're starting to generate something new, that requires a lot of focus, hard work, new ideas, intuition, and grit to continue to pursue that. And that, I think, kind of encompasses what a PhD is, but it is one of the highest academic qualifications that are offered by the universities. And it's original research, and that is then presented in the form of a dissertation or thesis. In some universities, I would say a couple of universities only in the UK, they call it a DPhil or Doctor of Philosophy, but most of the universities now call it a PhD, and the duration is very different, but the purpose is the same, that you're trying to develop a new knowledge in a particular field, and then it prepares you, it kind of grooms you to become a person who can excel in academia, research, and in specialized industry roles if you're interested. And it can be full-time or part-time. Like, for example, I'm a part-time PhD student, but of course that means that takes longer to complete your degree, but also allows you flexibility if you're doing another job or undertaking other qualifications. So you can choose based on what suits best to you. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide is about considerations on type of masters. It's not about PhD, but then it's put in here because some master's program can go on to a PhD. So just trying to yes, just to give an overview, I will probably gloss over it because it's specifically a master's, but master's is much shorter duration compared to a PhD. So you say it ranges from 9 months to 2 years, but a PhD would range from 3 to 5 years. And then the structure is more of like you're taught the original, already acquired knowledge, and you might do some new research or some independent study, but PhD is very much a completely new and a novel work. And assessment is again through course work and essays, written exams, or dissertations. But in a PhD, assessment is very variable and mostly culminates in a thesis that you have to defend. And career goals are quite similar, but of course more diverse for PhD students. And funding, I'll touch on that in the PhD, but progression is probably the main point here, that there are some degrees, the master's programs that actually prepare you to undertake a PhD. And those are the ones probably as a prelude to your PhD application if you want to apply for it. Next slide, please. Great. Okay. So what does a PhD degree involve? Um, this is not an exhaustive list. It's just to basically jot down the key components of a PhD. As you would know, it's a very self-driven qualification. So it's not like a usual university undergrad degree where everything is designed for you and you kind of continue to progress through the degree. It is very much driven by you, your supervisor, and what the program is like, and how far you take it and how best you take it. So you would be doing some initial coursework if it is requirement of your university where you apply. You would require to do some training and seminars because it's more like that you get grounded in research rather than just delivering on a project. So you want to become somebody who can then also supervise other PhD students. You need to train in different areas of conducting research, data analysis, and in attending seminars or presenting. Then you develop a research proposal, which is, of course, the meat of the PhD. And we will come to it that how you develop that. And then you conduct the research. Of course, that's the main part of it. And then, of course, you write the thesis, defend it. Additionally, you can publish that or start teaching during the PhD. That is all based on what your program requires of you. Next slide. So this is, I think, just to give you an idea of what is the difference between PhD and other degrees. But I would say, of course, it's one of the highest qualification that you can have in a field that, of course, would require more focus, longer duration of work, and then components would be research and training coursework, but also novel ideas, which is different to undergrad and master's qualifications where you would be developing some ideas, but this is basically taking a new idea and then working on it and developing something new. And career pathways, of course, are more diverse. You can continue to be in academia, you can become a lecturer, type of professorships of sort, or you can join industries, or you can join research development departments, or you can join teaching professions. Lots of other roles that you can apply for after PhD. And then via PhD, I think that's a fundamental question that you should be asking yourself. Is not just another qualification. Yes, it is, but it requires a lot of dedication and time commitment. And also, it's very much, as I said, is a self-driven process. So it all requires that what drives you to do this. It's the passion for research so you need to have a lot of curiosity that kind of continues for a longer period of time, for a few years, that you continue to deep dive into one idea that interests you and that you want to know more about it or you want to explore new knowledge. And then also you gain expertise to become an expert in a field so that you can apply for further roles. And career advancement, of course, it definitely opens a lot of doors for you in academia, research institutes, and industry. And then, of course, you can apply for professorship. That's a hierarchy that you can join as part of the university cadre staff. And of course, you contribute to society by advancing the field in knowledge in the particular field you're interested in. And then it gives you all the tools and grounding and skills to try to solve complex problems or answer unanswered questions, because the journey doesn't stop here. You continue to take that forward throughout your life. And then skill development, definitely critical thinking and problem solving and analytical skills are key, embedded within a PhD. Next slide. Great. So this is just to give you an overview what type of PhD programs are offered. I think the traditional PhD is that you're conducting a research and then you write it down as a thesis, you then defend it, and then you're doing independent research under faculty supervision, and that's usually what is commonly a PhD program is like. There are some professional PhDs as well, in which you are doing some professional practice and training alongside a PhD. And that, for example, the example given here in education, that you're teaching as well as doing a PhD with it at any point of your career. And then research versus taught PhDs. I would say most PhDs are research PhDs, in which you are developing a research project and then you are taking it forwards. You have some work streams on which you work, and then you have some courses that you attend, and some areas is taught PhD as well, or doctoral programs, as I said, in the US, where you have a whole coursework, you have to attend regular classes as well as doing a PhD. And it all depends on which field you want to be and which program you apply to. Next slide. And how can you pursue a PhD? This is a general description, but we would be coming to that specifically for each program. But you can directly apply to the university if there's a PhD for PhD programs. And then there are some research-based pathways, as I said earlier, that you have a master's that can transition to a PhD, or some integrated PhD programs and MPhils or MD research. And then you have research opportunities and some external fellowship that you can apply to that gives you enough funding to then then become a doctoral candidate at a university. And then there can be departmental vacancies that you are in touch with a particular department, and they now have a vacancy. They want some more PhD student, and you can apply for that. Next slide. Okay, so now this is the final slide before we move on to some specific types of PhDs, but this is to give an overview of what you require to prepare is, first of all, identifying what interests you, and then check whether you're eligible to apply for a PhD. And then you find a particular institution. And I think this second point and the third point of then developing a research proposal are the most important factors, that you align yourself with the right people as soon as possible and the right supervisors, and then develop a right project that you think you can continue to work on for the next few years. And then, of course, considering funding opportunities and making note of timeline when to apply and what funding you're going to be using. And primary documents we have listed here, and which, of course, I think are pretty generic to any graduate application. I think my colleagues are going to take on PhD in social science. Over to you, Iffat.
Yeah, thank you so much, Beenish, for introducing us to PhD programs and what it takes to earn a PhD. I'm Iffat, and I'll be providing you an overview of PhD in social sciences. Social sciences study human behavior, societal structures, and can we go to slide number 14? Yeah, thank you. PhD in social sciences, where we study human behaviors. So, yes, Ajmal, are you dealing with the slides? Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, is it the right slide?
Yeah, this is the right slide. Thank you, Ajmal.
Sorry.
Can
Yeah.
we go one slide back, please? Yeah, to provide an overview. Yeah, this is the slide. Thank you. Um, well, in PhD social sciences, we study human behavior, societal structures, and social relationships, analyzing how individuals and groups interact within various societal contexts. So, this field includes disciplines such as sociology, psychology, political science, economics, anthropology, and geography, allowing you to wide range of research areas to explore. In a social sciences PhD, you examine individuals, groups, or organizations such as communities, social networks, or institutions to understand group dynamics, interactions, and collective phenomena. Your research methods in social sciences PhD may include ethnography, interviews, structured, semi-structured, and focused group interviews, case studies of all types, and contextual analysis, as well as surveys, statistical analysis, and modeling to identifying patterns and relationships. Um, you will likely to engage in primary data, primary data collection through interviews, surveys, or fieldwork, as well as secondary data analysis using existing data sets or existing literature. Social science PhD programs emphasize theoretical development, interpretive analysis, and interdisciplinary approaches, allowing you to contribute to both academic and practical understanding of social issues and phenomena. Your PhD experience will likely to be a combination of research, fieldwork, data analysis, providing you with a comprehensive skill set applicable to various career paths in your life. Next. Yeah, thank you. So here comes the research methods and skills that a social sciences PhD candidate is supposed to use. So the method you employ will be depending on your projects, as well as the skill set you develop. So first, it is qualitative method. You will learn to conduct in-depth interviews, focus group, participant observations, and content analysis, developing skills in data collection and interpretation. You will gain proficiency in statistical analysis, survey design, and data modeling using different softwares. And most of you, I hope, are familiar with softwares like SPSS or Stata. Many social sciences PhD encourage to use both qualitative and quantitative approaches, allowing you to develop a comprehensive research toolkit. You will learn to critically engage with and contribute to theoretical frameworks in your field, and um, extensive practice in academic writing, presenting research findings, and communicating complex ideas to diverse audience will be a key part of your PhD journey. You will learn to navigate the ethical challenges of researching human subject and sensitive social issues. And many social sciences PhD offer opportunity to work cross discipline, enhancing your ability to approach complex social problems and um, from multiple perspectives and through multiple lens. Yeah, thank you, Ajmal.
Thank you, Iffat. So I'll be covering the PhD in Humanities section. So with the humanities, the focus is somewhat similar to the social sciences, but differs ever so slightly. So the humanities focus on the study of human culture, history, and expression, exploring how humans understand and interpret their experiences and values. So thematically, just culture, history, literature, things that sorts. The field includes, again, subjects like literature, philosophy, history, religious studies, languages, and the arts, which offers you a rich tapestry of human thought and creativity to explore. And with PhD programs in the humanities, a lot of the work is, much like any other PhD, the focus is predominantly on conducting original research, which often involves some kind of interpretive and analytical methods to study texts, artifacts, and cultural practices, but it's not entirely limited to just that. Your primary units of analysis are often textual materials or cultural artifacts. So again, it includes literature, historical documents, artworks, and philosophical texts. The humanities is also a very broad field, so I think the methods for philosophy and the methods for history can be radically different and also very similar, depends on how you choose to approach these. And a humanities PhD similarly then places a strong emphasis on extensive research and writing, alongside critical analysis and developing your skills in interpreting complex cultural and historical phenomena. And these programs often tend to have a longer duration compared to STEM fields with significant time dedicated to dissertation work. I will flag that this also depends very much on where you are doing your PhD. So if you're doing your PhD in Europe or in the UK, it's 3 to 4 years for the most part. And if it's in the United States, it's a radically different system. It probably takes closer to 6 to 7 years, 8 years standard. So these are just some things to keep in mind. And again, with all of this, this allows you to produce a substantial and original contribution to your field. Next slide, please. Yeah. And again, so I spoke of methods earlier, but the methods that you employ will vary differently on your project, as will the skills that you develop. The first one, and probably the most important one, and it's an important one throughout all of the humanities fields, is baseline textual analysis. With textual analysis, the idea is that you will develop advanced skills in reading a text very closely and deeply for the most part, interpreting it and critically analyzing it. And similarly, you'd be analyzing various texts and documents depending on what kind of PhD you're actually pursuing. For history, predominantly, your work is going to be archival research. So many humanities PhDs involve working with primary sources in archives, developing your skills in historical research and document analysis. And there's also oral history as well, and that's a different method altogether. Another main sort of method is within the digital humanities. So increasingly, you may have the opportunity to use digital tools and methods for analyzing cultural data, texts, or artifacts. And these digital tools it depends on how much you have access given on your topic, but this is a new and emerging field, and that's why this method is emerging within the humanities. Theoretical frameworks, so you can engage deeply with philosophical and theoretical concepts relevant to your field of study. For a lot of philosophy PhDs actually end up focusing predominantly on theory as a whole. So there's their main method is engaging with theory. Beyond that, you'll also have to deal with languages. And depending on your area of focus, you may need to develop proficiency in one or more foreign languages for research purposes. Because it's textual analysis, so you might choose to maybe, especially within a Pakistani context, you can very easily, within a PhD, choose to focus on local languages and local language literature within your own method, and then essentially find archives that are within your local language. Second to last, there's also an interdisciplinary approach. So humanities PhDs, as of late, have also sort of become much more accommodating, even within the UK, of interdisciplinary approaches. So you can combine, in theory, history with philosophy or history with anthropology or sociology. So the lines that distinguish humanities from social sciences are starting to blur quite a bit as well, because of the fact that the academia is taking a turn much more in favor of in favor essentially of interdisciplinary approaches. And lastly, which where your PhD ultimately culminates in, is 100,000. Well, it depends on the length, but generally about 100,000 word thesis, and that's with which you develop writing and argumentation. So you'll hone your skills in constructing complex, nuanced arguments and presenting them in long form academic writing. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. So I'm going to talk you through PhD in STEM. Okay, so STEM fields, it's a very broad field, and it encompasses science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And within science, you can have any, for example, I am from medical sciences, but you can have any other sciences that are applicable to you. It's quite rigorous and intensive. And again, the focus is the same. It's original research in the field of your interest. And STEM fields are more focused on objective data collection and evidence, and which of course requires experiments that can be reciprocated anywhere in the world, and requires more objective analyses of the data so that that can be generalizable. And you require more computational skills, experimental designs, and of course, if you're in engineering facilities. And so you would be designing more experiments, and some fields would require field work. And experiments can, of course, be in your own lab or in your own unit where you're working, or it can be with a collaborator, which sometimes are other universities or industries where they have bit more resources to help. It all depends on what your project is. It takes usually 3 to 5 years, depending on the program, but it requires a lot of work in actually refining the idea, experiments, making it as foolproof as you can, making it reproducible, um, and defendable. And then usually coursework is very minimal because you have a lot of on-the-go learning, but it all depends on where you are working. For example, if your field requires a particular statistical analysis tool, you might have to do some courses to learn that. But as I said, it's very self-driven usually, and you continue to go along with what you think is the requirement based on your project, and then you pick and choose courses. Next slide, please. Great. Okay. So I will probably just gloss over most of them because my colleagues have mentioned quite a few bits that are, I would say, common and generic, which is the writing and presentation. But I guess the important things in it are, because these are based on sciences, so you need experiments or designs. And for example, in my field, you need clinical trials that require very careful designing, and then based on which population you're going to conduct the study in. And then you need to analyze the data, and then computational skills, which are kind of common to other PhDs as well, but more rigorous and in STEM fields. And then lab techniques, where if you're a lab-based PhD, and again, scientific writing, which is slightly different to writing in the social sciences and humanities, but it's more like you are designing your experiments very much incrementally based on what has been done in the past, and then you're taking it forwards. And then, as I said, collaboration is very important in STEM, because not every unit is equipped with all the resources you require, and you have to work cross units to do your projects. And then presentation skills and write up for the thesis is the key as well. I guess for the funding part, I don't know if it and Musa, you want to talk about the humanities and social sciences bit, and I can talk about the STEM.
Sure. So for the humanities and social sciences, your funding can come through fellowships, grants, and teaching assistantships. So generally within the humanities and social sciences, funding is relatively less compared to STEM. So you have to rely on maybe nation-based funding schemes. So in Pakistan's case, maybe something a couple of Punjab related grants. I think there's some things you can rely on there. I think Commonwealth, cheapening, things that no, cheapening is masters, but there are certain grants, and we'll eventually go over that in our funding, in our workshop on funding. But if in most cases your funding tends to come through fellowships, grants, and teaching assistantships, and similarly, you may end up receiving support for research materials and travel to archives or field sites. But this is also, again, very university dependent, and there are certain fellowships that you can apply to for archives that are external to your university. But this is something where you probably have to gauge what is available based on what sort of research support is available within the university that you're applying to. Funding amounts can also vary very widely, but may generally be lower than those for STEM fields. And like a case in point, for example, is that in Oxford, a lot of STEM masters tend to provide funding for 4 years, with stipend included, and a lot of humanities and social sciences funding bodies provided for about 3 years. So there's like a like 1 year less in most cases. And lastly, fellowships or assistantships might cover your tuition and provide a modest stipend. So like in both of these cases, your assistantship or fellowship will cover all of your tuition, but after a certain point, you might not get your stipend, which is the general case for humanities and social sciences. Yeah.
Iffat, do you want to add anything before I move to STEM?
Yeah, yeah. I would agree to Musa's point that there are less funding opportunities available in humanities and social sciences. And if someone in this group is applying for PhD at Oxford, so there is funding available. If someone is from Balochistan, the CM of Balochistan, he recently visited Oxford, and he has announced a couple of funding in collaboration with Malala Education Fund. So these fundings are available, and yeah, we can discuss and deep dive into the funding sector in our funding workshop. And generally, there is ESRC funding available if someone is applying to UK universities. So yeah, maybe we can add more details into our dedicated workshop. Thank you.
Yeah, and then just to add on top of that, there's also the AHRC. So there's ESRC, AHRC.
Yeah.
These are two other funding schemes that are available.
Great. Okay. And in the STEM fields, as my colleagues have said, there's more funding, but of course, then it means more competition as well, equally. And so the funding that is usually comes in a couple of ways. It is either that your supervisor applied for a grant application and that got accepted. It's a big funding for a project, and they require somebody to run the project, and that would mean that whoever is running their their stipend and their tuition fees all covered within it. These ones are like gold dust, and which means that you don't have to worry about anything else. And of course, but that means that you are in touch with the supervisors years before, so that they know that you are an interested student who can take on and have these expertise. And they also advertise them as well if they're not able to find the right candidates. Then there are other ones that are research grants that are from societies, like for example in medicine, this is NHR, MRC, Wellcome Trust. These are big trusts that fund your projects, but of course that means that you have to write a project grant or fellowship grant, and then you get it, and then what it will cover is your tuition fee, your stipend, and also the resources that you require in the form of lab equipment, research materials for your research. Next slide. Great. Should we go as planned? The previous, Iffat, do you want to take on humanities? Oh no, sorry, Moosa.
Sure. I think this slide. Yeah, so in terms of career pathways within the humanities, your PhD can lead to it mostly within the humanities, it does tend to lead to academic careers and research positions. Beyond that, depending on maybe if your PhD is a little bit more focused on culture, archaeology or something of that sort, you can also end up in cultural institutions or culture and heritage related institutions. You'll also find opportunities in publishing, museum, archives, or as a consultant in various industries. And then lastly, government and nonprofit sectors often value the analytical and communication skills you'll develop. But beyond that, there are other ways in which to make yourself marketable to any different industry. It just also depends on how you, for example, use your summers, and that can allow you to pivot into different careers as well. But these are the general positions in which you do end up once you're done with the PhD in the humanities.
Yeah, as far as social,
yeah.
yeah, thank you, Musa. As far as social sciences career paths are concerned, your career options include academia, policy research, consultancies, and non-profitable organizations. And when we say that non-profitable organizations, it means that non-governmental organizations, not only on national level, but also international level. So you may work in market research, public policy, international development is one of the very good and viable option for social scientists, or as well as data analysis in various sectors. Your skills in research design and data analysis are valuable in both public and private sectors. So you can end up in doing research, serving in academia, producing more social scientists, or you can contribute your skills to international development agendas. So these are the options available to you.
Yeah, great, thanks. And in this in the STEM field, there are again diverse options. Most of the people try to apply for within a research institute for academic positions, becoming lecturers, and then applying for professorship pathway. But you can also go for industry if your field particularly attracts industry. And then also, I guess there are other ways that where you can find your career, if and that you can become an entrepreneur yourself, or you can join the university's R&D departments where you are reviewing other people's application and for grants, and then you're advising them, or you become research advisors. And also, I would say that you can like bounce back a bit in between the fees. And it doesn't mean that if you have joined industry, you can never go back to research institute. Once you've done a PhD, your experience continues to count as a postdoc experience, and then that will help you to join whichever field you want to do. And then, of course, your technical skills and your research skills can be used in finance, consulting, and data science. So it provides you a lot of flexibility, I would say, to work. Happy to take any questions.
All right, so we are now taking questions. If you want to ask directly, you can raise your hand or you can just type in the chat box. So Sayyida Tehreem Jafri has raised her hand. Can you unmute your mic and ask the question?
Yeah, thank you so much for such an informative talk. Actually, I wanted to ask about the PhD in STEM field. If a person don't have any kind of publication, then what about the ratios his or her application can be confirmed in that institute, or whether it is necessary to first write an email to your professors for project, or you can directly apply to university for the PhD position?
I can take that question. Thank you, Stareen. That was a great question. I think for the publication bit, I would say that it needs to be proportionate to your career. And that's what is, and also where you are from. And I think there's more understanding now in academia, although it should be more, that where you're coming from, you might not have the same opportunities as somebody applying from a developed country who had like intercalated bachelors, where they had independent research projects that they had to do. And so that's why your publication can never match those people's publication. However, they would require to, and it was exactly what I have done. I've done MBBS from Pakistan, and I didn't have an intercalated bachelor's. I was competing against people who have done bachelor's, master's within their undergraduate. So there was no comparison. However, they would require you to have shown some commitment and progress based on what opportunities you had. And I guess now in this time where we all are, I think technology is on our side, and you can definitely do things that do not require a lot of resources. For example, you can do small scale audits, you can do small scales like systematic reviews, you can do literature reviews, you can publish them. That just basically requires you and a computer and a librarian to help you with some stuff. And that basically just adds to your CV. I would just say that competition is pretty high and you just have to make the best bet. So, yes, they would consider, well, that's where you're coming from, but I would say you try your best as well to be as good a candidate as you can. And the second thing is for a project, I think aligning yourself with the right people as early as possible is probably my best advice to you. Because if you, for example, like a field and you're not finding some helping hands in Pakistan, You can very easily email people across the world in a particular institute. If you find a particular person whose research you have read, you can contact them, and usually people are very helpful and responsive. And I guess you just contact them, say, I'm very interested and I wanted to work with you, or I've read your work, and reference that. And then you can always take it from there. And I know people who have done small scale projects with people who were in other universities outside Pakistan, and just out of their curiosity and interest. And that, of course, means that that supervisor clocks you in their mind, that you are a very interested person who has reached out, and they would consider you for any future PhD applications.
All right, we have a question from Syed Ehsan Ali.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
First of all, thank you so much, Project EduAccess and Project for Pakistan. My question is, mostly it is mentioned that you need to secure admission and thereby you will be considered for the scholarship. For instance, the Oxford University offers different scholarships under the category of Oxford Scholarship. So is it mandatory to get an admission before applying for the scholarship? If that is the case, what is the appropriate way to reach out to a professor for admission? Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to take this question. Thank you, Ehsan Ali. It's good question, and a lot of candidates who are applying, they actually are looking for this clarity. But at University of Oxford, you just need to apply for admission, and there are two processes they work. There's a call for admission on the website in school. For instance, if I'm from a Said Business School and my college affiliation is from Pembroke College, so there was a call for admission. So we applied to the college, and then simultaneously there are several funding opportunities. So we applied to university, and then we applied to scholarship both at the same time. So and at Oxford, there's one thing, as we cited few moments ago. At Oxford, you are required, you're not really required to contact to your professor before you apply. You just submit, and there is a centralized process as far as I know. Maybe Musa is also from Oxford, so he'll be able to dive more deep into it. So you need not to contact to your supervisor or professor. What you all need to do is to submit your application and look for the funding opportunities. So these two are available at the same time, side by side. Thank you. I hope it answers your question.
And just to sort of add a little bit more, Oxford made the thing is that you have internal funding and you have external funding. So external funding, in the case of all of you here, Pakistan में बहुत सारी opportunities हैं of just different scholarships that you can apply to. Iffat mentioned an opportunity that the government of Balochistan has just started. I know that Punjab Education Endowment Fund also has scholarships for PhDs. I think HEC ke through you can probably find out a couple of other opportunities that you can get. But these are all external. So these are things that you would have to do alongside applying to Oxford and applying to different universities in the UK. The nice thing about this is if you get this, there's a little bit more flexibility. You have some funding, and then you just need to get the admission. And then us lihaz se you're pretty covered in terms of not having to stress too much about it. Specifically for Oxford, it's very, very department dependent. So when we talked earlier about humanities and social sciences having less funding opportunities and STEM having more, it means that in, let's say, maybe chemistry or chemical biology or the things of that sorts, if there are 10 spots available, 8 or 9 of them, or maybe like half of them will be eligible for internal funding, maybe through a lab, maybe through a professor's grant, maybe through internal Oxford University funding structures. So you might not need to rely that much on external funding if you're applying to STEM. For humanities and social sciences, it's very, very different. You don't have a lot of funding opportunities within it. So you either need to get internal funding at Oxford through some of their scholarships right at the end of their scholarship page, or you need to maybe find some external funding. So the internal route is very, very simple. You apply, and then you see if your department has nominated you for funding. And then maybe 2 or 3 weeks after you've gotten your admission, you will find out that you have gotten internal funding through one of these bodies that are available. And again, just lastly to answer, for Oxford specifically, at the end of your application page, you have 5 or 6 different scholarships that you can additionally apply to. If you are applying to Oxford and if you are applying to Cambridge, I would say start your application ahead of time, because even the scholarship applications take quite a bit of time. And I would recommend that you actually fill out all of those applications as well, because getting funding is a whole other process altogether and probably requires the same amount of time to dedicate as much as, actually getting an admission. And similarly, and sorry, lastly, contacting your supervisor depends very heavily on your department and also on whether or not your supervisor expects to be contacted. In my case, I did not contact my supervisor, but I know that somebody else working with a different supervisor in my faculty needed to get their approval before they applied. But Oxford is the kind of place that if you don't contact your supervisor, it isn't an immediate no. So still apply regardless of where you are in the application stage. And again, I hope that answers your question.
Right, we have a couple of more questions. I'll ask Izaz later, but there is a question in the chat box from Wajiha Imran, and she's saying that I'm a student of BS Statistics from GCWUS, so my last year in bachelor's degree. Am I eligible for that? I mean, admission. So, anyone?
I think I can take that because it's STEM. It's also, she did say that her aim is to do MPhil for future. I mean, you don't necessarily need to follow like you do a bachelor's and you do a master's and then you do a PhD. Of course, it provides you more knowledge and grounding and makes your CV strong to directly apply for a DPhil or PhD application. But you don't necessarily need to follow that. You have to look for the program you're applying. And of course, with the bachelor's, if you want to apply for a MPhil, again, there are a couple of ways. You can directly apply for probably an MD in research. You can downgrade to an MPhil if you think it's too much. You can upgrade it to a PhD. So a lot of institutes also provide you that flexibility. So I would definitely say that if you are looking for an MPhil, find out which particular university you want to apply in, and then look for their course and their eligibility because they're all very different.
All right, Izaz, you can ask your question now.
Thank you, sir. Sir, my question is, sir, कि मैंने जब पीएचडी के लिए अप्लाई सॉरी सर, जब मैं पीएचडी के लिए अप्लाई करता हूँ सर, मैंने ऑलरेडी एक प्रपोजल लिखा हुआ है। तो मैं जब सर्च करता हूँ पीएचडी के लिए तो डिफरेंट पोजीशंस आते हैं। सर, मेरा रिसर्च फोकस जो है वो कन्फ्लिक्ट थ्योरीज और टेररिज्म के ऊपर है। तो बहुत सारी पोजीशंस पीएचडी यूनिवर्सिटीज में आते हैं, तो वो वहाँ पर डिमांड करते हैं कि आप एक रिसर्च प्रपोजल सबमिट करें। लेकिन वो पोजीशन जो होती है वो ओवरऑल मेरे रिसर्च फोकस पे होती है, लेकिन थोड़ा सा चेंज होता है उसमें। तो आया हम एक रिसर्च प्रपोजल जब मैंने जो रिसर्च प्रपोजल पीएचडी के लिए बनाया है वो मैं हर एक पोजीशन के लिए सबमिट कर सकता हूँ, या जो इंडिविजुअल पोजीशंस आते हैं, लेट सपोज के किसी एक इंस्टीट्यूट या यूनिवर्सिटी से एक पीएचडी ऑफर हुई है, पोजीशन ऑफर हुई है, तो उस पोजीशन के रिगार्डिंग हम अलग प्रपोजल बनाए। मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था कि हर एक के लिए अपना अलग बनाना चाहिए, या एक प्रपोजल जो मैंने बनाया है वो हर एक पोजीशन के लिए हम सबमिट कर सकते हैं? थैंक यू।
So, I mean, just will answer very quickly. But depends to a certain extent. अगर जो position है वो जो PhD वाली है, if it exists specifically for one university, उसकी एक बहुत specific type of framing है, तो उसे probably बदलना है. Like it would be better to change it a little bit, depending on आप apply कहाँ पे कर रहे हैं. But also आप अगर आपका PhD is on what's the word? अगर आपकी PhD is on conflict resolution or terrorism, आप बहुत सारे डिपार्टमेंट्स में भी इसे फिट कर सकते हैं। यू कैन राइट अ जनरल प्रपोजल, आप इसे पॉलिटिकल साइंस या इंटरनेशनल रिलेशंस या इंटरनेशनल डेवलपमेंट, डिपेंडिंग ऑन आपका क्या एग्जैक्ट एंगल है कॉन्फ्लिक्ट रेजोल्यूशन में, आप एक जनरल सी प्रपोजल लिख सकते हैं एंड देन यू कैन टेलर इट टू अ स्पेसिफिक डिपार्टमेंट और मेथड। क्योंकि इस तरह की जो रिसर्च बेस्ड पोजीशंस हैं जो स्टेम में बहुत ज़्यादा होता है कि किसी लैब की एक स्पेसिफिक प्रोजेक्ट है और उसके साथ आप यूर एडिंग योरसेल्फ ऑन टू इट। ह्यूमैनिटीज़ और सोशल साइंसेज में थोड़ा कम है, तो अगर उस तरह की एक पोजीशन आ जाए आई वुड से डेफिनेटली अप्लाई फॉर इट, उसके लिए एक स्पेसिफिक एप्लीकेशन लिख लें। लेकिन अलग से अगर आप एक जनरल सी प्रपोजल लिख सकते हैं विद दैट पर्टिकुलर रिसर्च, दैट वुड बी ईजियर फॉर यू। वो मतलब ज़्यादा यूड बी एबल टू अप्लाई टू मोर यूनिवर्सिटीज़ एज वेल। थोड़ा सा एक दो मतलब सुपरवाइजर का नाम बदल लें, बट majority would stay the same.
ओके सर, थैंक यू।
Yeah, thank you, Musa. I want to add a bit क्योंकि जो एजाज का इंटरेस्ट है, it is a bit relevant what I'm doing. तो एजाज, हम आपको ये कहना चाहते हैं कि सबसे पहले आप ये फिगर आउट करें कि आपका इंटरेस्ट क्या है, आपका एरिया ऑफ इंटरेस्ट क्या है, क्योंकि सोशल साइंसेस में ये चीज़ बहुत मैटर करता है। अगर आपका एरिया ऑफ इंटरेस्ट, जैसा कि आप बता रहे हो कि वो पीस थीरीज एंड काउंटर टेररिज्म ही है, तो फिर आपको करना ये है कि आपको डिफरेंट यूनिवर्सिटीज़ की वेबसाइट के ऊपर जाके सोशल साइंसेज के डिपार्टमेंट्स में बहुत सारे पॉलिटिक्स एंड इंटरनेशनल अफेयर्स के डिपार्टमेंट्स आपको मिल जाएंगे। आप दुरहम यूनिवर्सिटी को देख सकते हैं अगर आप यूके में अप्लाई करना चाहते हैं। आप स्वास यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ लंदन को देख सकते हैं क्योंकि स्वास में मैंने खुद भी अप्लाई किया था और उनके बड़े डेडिकेटेड किस्म के डिपार्टमेंट हैं, और जब आप उनके वेबसाइट के ऊपर जाएंगे तो यू विल फाइंड आउट अ कंप्लीट लिस्ट ऑफ देयर फैकल्टी, और उसमें उनका एरिया ऑफ इंटरेस्ट मेंशन होता है। आप उनका एरिया ऑफ इंटरेस्ट देखें जिसका अलाइन है आपके एरिया ऑफ इंटरेस्ट के साथ, आप उसको ईमेल लिखिए और उसको बताइए कि आप इसके ऊपर प्रपोजल आपका बना हुआ है। जो मैंने किया था, मैंने अपने प्रोफेसर को प्रपोजल भेजा था, उन्होंने मुझे, जैसे कि बीनिश ने कहा कि दे आर वेरी cooperative and supportive people, and they replied you back. ऐसा नहीं है कि जैसा कल्चर यहाँ पे इस मुल्क में है कि आप ईमेल करें तो अक्सर आपको रिस्पांस नहीं मिलता, वो रिस्पांस करते हैं आपको और वो आपको फिर बताएंगे इफ देयर इज अ रूम फॉर इम्प्रूवमेंट इन योर प्रपोजल दे विल गाइड यू, और वो कुछ स्पेसिफिक लिटरेचर भी आपको सजेस्ट कर सकते हैं। सो एट दिस स्टेज मुझे ऐसा महसूस हो रहा है कि आपको व्हाट ऑल यू नीड टू डू इज टू look into the university's website, और irrespective of that कि वहाँ पे एडमिशन अभी ओपन है या नहीं है, क्योंकि कुछ यूनिवर्सिटीज में बाय एनुअल एडमिशंस ओपन होते हैं। यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ दुरहम और यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ लंदन में हर साल के इख्तिताम के ऊपर एडमिशंस ओपन होते हैं। तो आप अभी, दिस इज द राइट टाइम परहैप्स टू रीच आउट टू द प्रोफेसर्स। आई होप इट आंसर्स योर क्वेश्चन, एजाज।
थैंक यू इफत, गॉट इट, थैंक यू, यस थैंक यू।
दो स्टूडेंट्स जो हैं उन्होंने पूछा है कि इज देयर एनी वर्कशॉप ऑन रिसर्च प्रपोजल एंड पर्सनल स्टेटमेंट? So I guess there is a workshop. I'm not sure about the dates. Can any of the panelists?
I think मेरे पास स्केड्यूल पड़ा है, मैं बस अभी बहुत जल्दी से चेक कर लेता हूँ एग्जैक्टली
आई
कब वो
थिंक जो
वर्कशॉप।
नेक्स्ट वाली ही रिसर्च प्रपोजल राइटिंग है, संडे 24th November, if I'm not wrong.
I guess in this presentation, if you will look in the recording, you will find the slide where all the presentations are mentioned along with dates. So there is a research proposal workshop that I can remember. There is another question from Sayyid Ehsan Ali.
As one of you mentioned that there is a centralized system for applying. But while I was applying through HEC scholarship, Commonwealth scholarship, they specifically asked about, getting an admission prior to applying for the scholarship. So my question is how to approach a professor. Should we attach our CV and a proposal along with the mail, or should I just directly mail asking for approval? And related to that, one of my concerns is that what is the importance of IELTS for the university in UK? Should I take the test before applying? Thank you.
कैन आई टेक इट? ओके, बिनिश आप कुछ कहना चाहती हैं आप?
नहीं, I just want to mention this के जैसे बाकी पैनलिस्ट ने भी कहा कि you just need to see which program you're applying for, and like I'm doing a master's with University of Oxford as well, and I just applied for the application first. So the scholarship basically said that you need to first secure a place. Like for example, I'm an Oxford Pakistan program scholar for this year. So I first had to apply for a place, get a place, because that is also quite difficult to get if you're applying for a competitive place, a course. So first you get the spot, then University of Oxford automatically considers you for some internal scholarship as well. But also they give you, as Musa said, some options that which are relevant. Like for example, to me, based on my background, they gave me option to apply for Oxford Pakistan program because that would be relevant to me. I was going to apply anyway, but even the OPP scholarship asks you for first to have a place. But then, of course, there are some applications where they don't ask you to have a place. You just start the process sooner. So it all depends on where you are. And I wasn't very clear about contacting the supervisor thing because, as others have mentioned, it all depends on which course you're applying for. Most of these applications are centralized. You're not contacting supervisors directly. But if your field is very niche or you think that you need more support, or you think, as Iffat said, you directly aligns with somebody whose work you have been following, there is no harm in contacting them and asking because these funding opportunities are very limited. And if they know already that there is somebody who is very enthusiastic, passionate about work and can do deliver, they definitely would consider that applicant. But of course, most of them are centralized.
या इसमें कैन आई ऐड अ बिट रिगार्डिंग द आइल्स जो उन्होंने सवाल पूछा है कि आइल्स की रिक्वायरमेंट्स क्या हैं सो व्हेन यू आर अप्लाइंग तो आपको कहीं ना कहीं पे एक लिंक मिलता होगा जिसके ऊपर रिक्वायरमेंट्स का पोर्शन होता है आप उस रिक्वायरमेंट्स को देखेंगे तो लैंग्वेज रिक्वायरमेंट में देयर आर टू वेज जो मैं अपने एक्सपीरियंस से आपको शेयर कर सकती हूँ यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ लंदन का जो आइल्स का स्कोर है दे डू नॉट एक्सेप्ट लेस देन 7 बैंड्स इसी तरीके से जो लंदन स्कूल ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स का है दे डू नॉट एक्सेप्ट लेस देन 7.5 इसी तरीके से फ्यू यूनिवर्सिटीज दे आर एक्सेप्टिंग इवन 8 बैंड्स आइल्स का कोर्स 6.5 से नीचे कोई भी यूनिवर्सिटी आइल्स का स्कोर एक्सेप्ट नहीं करेगी तो जब भी आप देखते हैं एप्लीकेशन के प्रोसेस के ऊपर व्हेन यू embark on that so there is a selection criteria की हेडलाइन होती है आपके उस पोर्टल के ऊपर जिसको आप देख रहे हैं तो आई वुड रियली सजेस्ट कि उसको प्लीज आप जरूर देखिए क्योंकि अगर आपका एडमिशन हो जाता है और आपका आइल्स की रिक्वायरमेंट पूरा नहीं होता सो व्हाट यूनिवर्सिटी विल डू इज कि वो आपको कंडीशनल ऑफर लेटर भेजते हैं so conditional offer letter means that you are supposed to fulfill the further more criteria जो यूनिवर्सिटी आपको कह रही है और उसके बाद प्रोसेस थोड़ा और लेंथी हो जाता है so I would suggest कि rather than going for that long lengthy and rigorous process आप शुरू में ही आइल्स का तैयारी साथ साथ कर दें और आइल्स का एग्जाम दे के try to secure good grades I mean good bands.
All right. So just before taking the next question, I am looking at the dates for the next workshops. So there is a workshop on personal statements and statement of purpose on Sunday, November 17 at 4 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time. And then there is a separate workshop on research proposal writing. It's also at 4 p.m. on Sunday, November 24. So we have another question, and it's from Maria. Is it possible to get a place at self-funded PhD positions like emergent methods in children's book illustration at ARU, and after securing the spot, apply for funding from mainstream scholarships or grants?
I think though I'm not particularly familiar with this position or university, lekin depends at what stage in which you get this admission in the process. Because some scholarships are available closer to March, wo applications khulte hain as the year goes along. So I would recommend again seeing external scholarships well, I recommend seeing if there's anything internal scholarships जो आपके सूबे में available हैं या at a national level या HEC के through, if there is anything at that level, और अगर उस level पे नहीं है, then if you get this admission, maybe realistically probably if you apply in November or वो result आ जाए February तक, there will be a couple of scholarships that are available साथ में. But I would say that for something like the humanities and social sciences, which I suppose to a certain extent this is, try to see अगर कोई internal funding positions हैं for this particular position. And अगर नहीं है, then obviously try to pivot and see अगर external funding available है, and then to see अगर what if those funding bodies would fund this particular PhD.
All right. Any other question from any individual?
I just want to add a comment to this last question. I think securing a spot doesn't require funding at that time. If you're applying for an application, if you get accepted, the funding bit comes after it. Then the university asks you how you're going to fund it. So I would say that you don't need to declare first who's going to fund. You just need to just get accepted first. But I would be a bit skeptical about only self-funding just to for the beginning and then applying for scholarship, because your time is limited for a PhD. And if you apply for a scholarship, they take months to get back to you. And if it's not successful, doing a PhD in any of the UK universities as an international student is very expensive, and it's not just a tuition fee, it's also the project fee, it's also the staying in the UK, and you have to then have a bank statement to declare that you can cover all the costs if you are a self-funded. So it's a major undertaking, and I think putting hopes on a future scholarship that might fund you is probably a bit shaky ground. So I would try to have a secure funding plan in place before doing this.
We have a couple of more questions, but before that, I just want to share with all of the students two important links in the chat box. So one of them is related to a guide on the application process. And then we have recording of the previous sessions available on YouTube. So if there is something missing, you can consult those recordings, and you can also search the guide. We have another question from Syed Ehsan Ali.
During the presentation, Iffat mentioned that it's useful to learn strata R and SPSS. If I'm to ask that, what would you prefer if I'm to choose among the three? Which one should we learn?
Yeah, thank you, Ehsan. This is an important question because like quite often social scientists they think that it is synonymous. I mean, STATA R or SPSS can use interchangeably. लेकिन यहाँ पे थोड़ी सी क्लैरिटी की अशद ज़रूरत इसलिए है because it all depends on your research design and your research methods. If you are using a mixed method approach, I mean, you're using a lot of methods within the qualitative research methods. तो I think आपको R की ज़्यादा ज़रूरत पड़ेगी क्योंकि R is more like discourse analysis or content analysis or document analysis में आपको help करेगा if you are going to apply for political science या peace and conflict studies या फिर global affairs या इस तरह के subjects. SPSS का ज़रूरत आपको उस वक़्त पड़ेगा जब आप क्वालिटेटिव और क्वांटिटेटिव दोनों मेथड्स को यूज़ करेंगे. वो मल्टी मेथड नहीं है, वो मिक्स मेथड होगा. आई मीन क्वालिटेटिव और क्वांटिटेटिव जब दोनों को आप यूज़ करेंगे तो उस वक़्त आपको ज़रूरत पड़ेगा SPSS का. और जो आपका स्टेटा है, स्टेटा इज़ प्योरली related to quantitative analysis जहाँ पे आपको there are plethoras of surveys and you just are required to generate results out of those surveys. तो ये थोड़ी सी एक क्लैरिटी है जो being a PhD कैंडिडेट मुझे अभी तक समझ आई है और मैंने आपसे शेयर किया है। लेकिन सीखने में कोई हर्ज नहीं है। आपके पास अगर टाइम है, अगर आपके पास टाइम है तो आप तीनों को देखिए, आपको फ्री वर्जन मिल जाएगा। अभी रिसेंटली स्टेटा का जो फ्री वर्जन है, डोंट गो फॉर स्टेटा 17 और 16, आप स्टेटा का 13 और 14 वर्जन ऑनलाइन अवेलेबल है। व्हाट यू कैन डू इज यू कैन जस्ट डाउनलोड इट, सो स्टार्ट प्लेइंग विद दैट। आपको इंटरेस्ट अगर डेवलप होता है तो यू कैन डेल्व मोर डीप इनटू दैट। सीखना शुरू कर दिए, क्योंकि कोई भी स्किल जो आप सीखेंगे वो आपके काम आएगी पीएचडी में इन वन वे और दी अदर।
थैंक यू सो मच।
जी, और किसी का कोई क्वेश्चन हो? एनी क्वेश्चन? Yeah, I think that's all. Thank you very much, all of you, especially the panelists, for sparing from their valuable time. And I hope all the prospective students best for their future endeavors. And thank you very much for today. Khuda Hafiz.
Thank you so